Everybody, if you would, just touch your chest, your body, your heart, something like that, and just repeat this after me. Say, my body
My body
is the temple,
is the temple,
the house,
the house,
the home
the home
of God.
of God.
As God
As God
is a creator,
is a creator,
I am also a creator.
I am also a creator.
I must learn
I must learn
what to create
what to create
and what not to create.
and what not to create.
I am not a mistake.
I am not a mistake.
I am designed with purpose.
I am designed with purpose.
It's up to me
It's up to me
to find that purpose.
to find that purpose.
Amen.
I thought you was gonna tell us what our purpose was.
Oh, no, I'm not going to tell you. That's up to
I'm kidding. That's what we was talking about.
you. Yes. Well, it's Jamie's song, of course, and I don't always title my messages. Normally I don't, because I'm normally teaching on series of things. Like, I taught on the power of water. I taught on the miracle of you for quite a while. And actually, the last few weeks I've been kind of back and forth with this title or this term, Experience Life. And that was your song, is basically about life. And that's and so that's why we are here. We're here to do what? We're really here to experience life. And I think it says in John 10:10 that you might have what? Abundant life. Now that's pretty clear. What is abundant life? Abundant life is, to me, life to its fullest, to its greatest potential. The thing about most of what I see as the message of Christianity is you get by the best you can here while you're here, but your best life is not going to be until you get there. Wherever there is.
Yeah.
Of course, that there would be, in their terminology, is heaven. When you get to heaven, then in heaven, you're going to live in this crystal city. In this big city that the streets are gold. And how many of y'all would like to go through Atlanta? Do you know anybody that likes to go through Atlanta? I don't even know why anybody want to live in Atlanta. Well, can you just imagine God's crystal city? It will make Atlanta pale in comparison as far as size. Come on, you don't even think about that. You're talking about a mess. No, those lies, we have been taught to just embrace them, and many times even fight for them. Because sometimes in Christianity, they can get pretty dogmatic. I can remember quite a number of years ago, 20, 25 years ago, I had some guys come in, and we were running 150, 200 people, and I was teaching against the rapture, and I had a couple of guys actually come in, and they interrupted the service, and one of them said, well, I was quoting Greek and Hebrew, and they said, they started reading me something from the Bible, and I said, what are you reading that from? This is in the middle of a service with 100 plus people. And I heard it, and I said, oh, you have an interlinear translation, don't you? Yeah. I said, well, do you not realize that if you'll look in the front of your interlinear translation, it'll tell you that that's the King James translation that you're reading? And they didn't know that. They got mad. They actually wanted to come up and take me out and beat me up. That's the good brethren.
Had the same thing 15 years ago at the men's gathering.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Absolutely. My son-in-law was ready to take them outside. We go fight that out. Yeah, okay. So it can, dogmatism can become very overbearing, to say the least. It can be dogmatic, extremely dogmatic. I want to read you something here that I wrote last week. The idea of coming to the earth realm is to experience life. That's God's idea, or source, whatever you would like to call this term. God is the source of all life, period. Doesn't matter what life that is or where that life is at. And the thing that God did or God does to give us this ability to experience life, and you'll see this, especially today, you'll see this in technology and in science, where that they will show us now even galaxies way out, and how the galaxies, have you ever noticed how they all look like a big wheel spiral, but they're all doing one thing. Every one of them is spinning. Absolutely, absolutely. Just like our Milky Way galaxy, it's spinning, and everything in it is spinning and twirling and dancing. And if you would just put some thought to that, you realize that everything that's out there that's spinning is movement. Movement is the first sign of life. When nothing moves, nothing lives. But when movement is involved, then time is put in place. And a lot of cult or a lot of religious ideologies now are trying to remove that very thing from us, is time. In other words, you got to learn to stay in the moment, because eternity is always in the moment. It's not in the past, and it's not in the future. That's not true. Memory is the greatest thing you've got, because it's memory that begins to give you the concept of time. And if you did not have memory, you would not be. You wouldn't have being. Every cell in your body has a memory, and it remembers. It remembers what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. Aren't you glad?
Yes.
Because if you didn't have that, that's all from memory. And you can't have memory without you have time, and you can't have time without you have movement, and everything in the universe has movement. So that shows you very clearly that God is really into life. So God's really, really into your life. The reason for that being is you are on the cutting edge of what God experiences as life. In other words, whatever you are doing, experiencing, and living, God is too, because God's living it with you. He's right there in your mess, or in your calamity, or in your blessing, or in whatever that you want to call whatever you have. And I'm talking to me. So God's right in the middle of it. Isn't that wonderful? The idea of coming to the earth realm is to experience life. Many of the things that we experience in life are not life, but distractions. And what do I mean by that? A distraction is a thing that prevents someone from giving full attention to something else. And everyone, I have that. I have to deal with that myself. I have to deal with the distractions. And the distractions many times comes in the forms of a thought. And if you ever had a thought that's like a freight train going down a mountain and there ain't no way to stop it. I mean, I've had them thoughts and they just, and they just take you with them. The only way you can get to a place is not to try to stop it, but to stand outside of it. Not to let it just pull you into it and take you with it, because it will. Mine does. Mine will just, goodness, it just overwhelms me. That's a distraction from my true self. So it's the things. So what comes into our life every day is not completely our doing. Every day offers us many opportunities to choose. See, that's how life works. It just offers you these opportunities, and some of the opportunities that we take aren't for our better or greater good. Many of them are to strengthen us as we resist them. So, life is given to us so we can realize its potential. Life is limitless and continues to move on. It doesn't stop. There's not any way you can stop a galaxy or an earth or anything else that's moving and spinning. There's no way to stop it. It is set in a perpetual motion. And so that means that you're not going to stop life. We're either going to join it and get with the program and move with it and experience it for our greater good, or not. And you can add anything that you'd like to that. So, life is limitless and continues to move on. It does not stop at a happy moment or a tragic moment. It doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call your tragedy and How many people get stuck at tragic moments? And all that does, to get stuck in a tragic moment and to just hold on to it, and hold on to it, and hold on to it, is to do detriment to yourself. It doesn't glorify anything. It doesn't help anything. It actually deteriorates me. So if I have a moment in my life that was very unpleasant, or that brought pain to me, hurt, discomfort, or disappointment, and I hold on to it, and hold on to it, and hold on to it, who's it doing any good? It ain't doing me no good. It's just dragging me into a pit. And so, you know, people lose their health over that. Hanging on. Bless God. I'm talking to myself, I'll tell you. We have to get past all these things. So, I want you to, if you would like, you can get your Bible and turn to the book of Psalms. Psalms chapter 40, we're going to read from that, look at that in just a minute. But the idea that we have of coming to the earth is a phenomenal, marvelous idea, because this is heaven, if there ever was a term heaven. I could say it this way, because I like to use the word heaven for the two aspects of your being, the physical and the spiritual, because that's really what heaven is, the physical and the spiritual. So heaven's not outside you, actually heaven is you, and it is within you. But if I use the term heaven to try to describe, in many ways it's a descriptive term to try to describe the earth, but a paradise is a better term. The earth is a paradise. It really is a paradise. And you can just see the beauty of it everywhere. And it doesn't matter what season you want to look at it, if you just look at that season for what it is. I mean, you know, right now we're moving into fall, into autumn, and oh my, in this particular area that we are so blessed to live. We don't realize how blessed we are to live in this area. That as we move into this, it's one of the most glorious times of the year. The temperature, the beauty, all of that is just so awesome. But listen to this. When we are the most comfortable, thoroughly furnished, most comfortable and thoroughly furnished group of people, or should I say, age of people. When I was a little boy, I'm going back in the 40s and 50s, and I'm just 59, so I don't know how I can do that, but I can do it. I'm going to do it anyway. Go back in the 40s and the 50s. When I was a little boy, cars didn't have air conditioning. Cars didn't have electric windows to roll up. Cars didn't even have radios in them. If you had a radio in your car, but even back then, if you just had windshield wipers on, those were options. Cars didn't have that on. They didn't have an air conditioner. As a matter of fact, probably only one house out of 200 or 300 had an air conditioner. See, I'm not going back that far. Back in 40, nobody had air conditioning. That I knew of. I didn't know anybody that had an air conditioner back in the 40s and the 50s. I don't remember anybody.
They weren't created until...
We didn't even have running water in the house. No, when I was a little boy, we did not have running water. We didn't have a faucet you go turn on and there's the water. We had a well. And actually the well was on the front porch, and every bit of the water that we washed, drank, or bathed in come out of that well, and we drew it up ourselves. Now, and like I said, I'm 59 plus. And in my short lifetime, we have all of these conveniences right here at our fingertips. And yet, now here's the part that I'm getting, because we come here to experience life, and yet right now we have more dissatisfaction, we have more unhappiness, we have less joy, less people, I mean millionaires that are not even happy. in the world? I mean, I literally want to cuss sometimes, and I think, how can you have all that and not be happy and not be filled with joy? But I'm telling you, the bigger majority of people are like that today. Today. What's going on? I mean, what is wrong? We have more conveniences available to us than ever in the history of mankind, and yet we complain, we fuss. It's too hot, it's too cold. My electric window won't go up or won't go down. I mean, you know, hey, it's time, really, it is a time that we really need to check up from the neck up. We really do. So, we are the most prosperous, well-to-do people of any generation ever to live on this planet. But most of the people on this planet are not happy, are not joyful. And most of them are looking, and I'm going to say something I know is different from what probably a lot of people think, or most people think happiness only comes to from the things that are happening around you. That is not true. That's the part that I want to really get at and hammer. Happiness comes from within you. Happiness is something that you have that's in you, that you learn to experience life and appreciate life, and that will bring you happiness and joy. And everybody wants happiness. Everybody wants pleasantness. Everybody's looking for the joy of living. I don't care who they are. That's the really deep goal and intent of their life, of their being. That's why they seek comfort. That's why they seek all of the different things that we claim. And so someone asked me how that I take the Bible and teach the things that I teach from it. I said, well, it hit me like a ton of brick years and years ago. It hit me like this is not a history book. This is a mystery book, and the mystery is the temple, the house, the home where God lives, which is my physical body. So then it hit me with, why would not the Bible be a book about my physical body rather than a book about a bunch of people or a special people or a chosen people somewhere out on the earth that only God had a special interest in? I said, why would I want to serve a God that's that prejudiced? Because all that does to me is teach prejudice. And I'm not a prejudiced person. So I had to begin to look at everything that I thought that I believed in a different light. And so that began to make me do a lot of what you would call soul searching. Yeah, looking deep within just to see what's going on. So if you would, you found Psalms chapter 40. I want to read something here. And you know, you can mark this in your Bible if you can, and we'll deal with it from there. But you can say, don't say what it says, or you can say, well, it does say what it says. Psalms chapter 40. This also is repeated in the book of Hebrews, and so we'll try to go over to the book of Hebrews and look at it in the book of Hebrews to see it. Verse 6, Psalms chapter 40 and verse 6, sacrifice and offerings. Now, when you see those two words, sacrifice and offerings, first off, let me make sure that you understand what that means when it says sacrifice and offerings. When it's talking about sacrifice, it's not talking about you cutting your air conditioner up to 78 because it saves on your bill. And so you got to sacrifice. It ain't talking about that. It's talking about killing a heifer, a bull, or a sheep or a goat. That's what it's talking about. Sacrifice and offerings thou did not desire. This passage is saying God did not desire sacrifice and offerings. You say, but Brother Lynn, why do they have the book of Leviticus? Why do they have the book of Numbers? Why do they have the Torah that's set up on this idea of offering a sacrifice unto God so that He won't be mad at us and will look upon our sin lightly or turn His head or. All right, look at this, now watch it. Sacrifice and offerings you did not desire. Mine ears hast thou opened. The word open here actually in Hebrew is karah. And the word karah actually means you had to dig into my ear. Why? Because I couldn't hear you. That's true today. And that's what I do a lot, is I try to dig into the ear because it's so hard to hear the truth. Why? Because there is so much wax of beliefs and religion that clogs my ear and hinders me from hearing. I mean, I know that. I mean, because I know it for myself. There's so many deceptions out there. So notice clearly it says, mine ears hast thou dug deep in. Burnt offerings and sin offerings. Burnt offerings. Do you remember how they had to burn the heifer on the altar? Look at this. This is a burnt offerings and sin offerings have you not required. I thought God required that. Now, if this is true, God did not require anybody to be a sin offering for anything. That's a tough one right there, and that's a difficult one. If you can hear what I am trying to say without saying what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying what this says. Okay? I didn't write it, and I'm just saying it. Burnt offerings and sin offerings. Now, what do you think of when you hear a sin offering?
Jesus.
I didn't say it. Well, I'm saying it. God said He didn't require that. Okay? Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written to me, I delight to do your will, O God. Yea, thy law, that word law is Torah, which actually means principles and precepts. It actually means logic. Logic. It's like me and the girls, my daughters, went up to see their mom in the nursing home. And they said, well, you can only, this has been quite a few months back, and they said you can only see her in this special COVID room that we have prepared. You can only see her with a mask on. And so I said, well, that's fine. We want to see, the girls want to see their mom. So Andrea and Rochelle, the oldest and the youngest, Tracy was in Louisiana and couldn't be here. And that day when we were scheduled to see Connie, Rochelle she was called in and she had to work. So she couldn't be there. So it was Andrea and myself, my baby and myself. So we went in, we had our little mask on, we sat down, and Connie just kind of sits there, and she had a mask and she just pulls it off. She don't know, she can't talk, she can't walk. She's advanced Alzheimer's, she weighs 100 pounds, she's down to nearly nothing. And she just pulls that mask off. And I said, she don't even know me from a doctor or whoever comes in her room with a mask on, because they all look alike because they have a mask. I just took the mask off. And when I did, immediately she just lit up. She had a big smile come on her face, and Andrea took her mask off. So Andrea and I are sitting here. This happened about 4 months ago, I think. Andrea and I are sitting here. I'm across from the table from Connie. Andrea is over here beside her mother. And Connie had a moment. Now, in Alzheimer's, you can have a moment, and that moment is a memory. Thank God for a memory. And you know what our memories are? They're past. Connie had a moment. She recognized her baby girl. And she did, when she did, she just reached out and she grabbed hold of Andrea's hand. And she's sitting there holding Andrea's hand, and then all of a sudden, she hasn't talked now in over a year. All of a sudden, she said, I love you. Well, my God, Andrea just fell apart. I did too. We hadn't heard her say nothing like that. And she's sitting there holding Andrea's hand. Well, the nurse is sitting outside the door, sees both of us with the mask off, and sees us touching. And so what does she do? She comes in there and she grabs Andrea's hand, pulls it back, and spanks Connie on the hand and says, Connie, you can't do that. You can't touch them. Here's a lady that's advanced Alzheimer's. She don't even know her name. She don't even know my name. She don't know her daughter's name. And pardon the expression, that pissed me off. And I told that nurse, I said, look, I said, she's having a moment with her daughter. And if she wants to hold her daughter's hand and she wants to touch her daughter's hand, you or nobody else can stop that. And of course, my righteous indignation rose up. Now, I got madder than hell. And so I said a few things to that lady. And she said, well, I'm just going to have to call the law. I said, you need to go out there and call the law right now. You need to go ahead and call the law and tell them to come down here. And so, of course, Connie grabbed Andrew's hand. She left, and we stayed for a little bit longer. And they didn't call the law, but they wrote me up. They blacklisted me. From that moment on, I couldn't see her until finally they have listed some of the restrictions. And I told them, we had a phone conversation because we couldn't have a face-to-face conversation with the administration. The girls, my 3 girls and myself, the 4 of us was on a conference call. And so finally, after we talked for 10 minutes on a conference call, Tracy's in Louisiana, Andrea and me are here in Dalton, and Rochelle was calling out of Cleveland, Tennessee. And so finally, and Rochelle, she's Connie's healthcare advisor in the wheel. So Rochelle, I give Rochelle, she has control of everything. So after we said a few things, and they said they had lifted the blacklist, and I said, well, I want to say this to y'all, and I said, I'm going to have to get off of here because if I don't, I'm going to say some things that y'all may want to call the law on me again. And so I said, simple logic. I'm giving you this story because of that word law. When you read that word law, most people read that and they think 10 commandments. That's the most ridiculous thing that religion's ever shoved down your throat. Actually, the word means logic. God is the most logical entity that you ever can. And I'm going to show you some other things from Scripture that surely to God we can see. Because even in Isaiah, God says, come to me, and let's reason. The word reason actually means let's logically look at this. And I said this to them before I got off the phone. I said, even common sense and logic should tell you people, you nurses, that what you're doing to these people, putting them in a prison, is not for their greater good, but is actually destroying their life. Because you take Connie, they put her in a little room, they close the door, and she's basically, that's her cubicle, she's in prison. And she can't even roll over in the bed. They have to turn her over or place. And so if they decide to put her up against the wall and roll her over against the wall, she lays there and looks at the wall for hours and hours and hours. Where is logic? Where is reason? What's going on right now in all of our society? We come here to experience life. And if we do not come to a place of common sense and logic, we are missing some of the greatest opportunities that we ever had. Yes, you may look radical. Yes, you may have to stand up and say things. Maybe you even have to say, no, I will or I won't do that. Why? There's no logic or reason behind it. So when you see that word law, I want you to remember, and that's the reason I said this story, and I wanted to emphasize that instance, because it was that very thing. Finally, I got off the phone with him and said, look, Rochelle, you handle it the best way you can. Well, long story short, they did lift every restriction and thing that they said because they thought we were about to sue Ridgewood Manor Nursing Home for the instances, because I have a lot of things on my phone as a video that when I was allowed to go into her room, that I videoed that nobody wants to see. Because I went in and videoed some things. Anyway, if you will go to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. And look at verse, let's start with verse 5. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifice and offerings. And you can see, you'll hear the quotes out of Hebrews 10:5. You're going to hear some of these quotes that I just read you out of Psalms 40. You'll hear the quotes. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifice and offerings thou wouldest not, but a body. Everybody say a body.
Body.
Now, if that's why I asked you at the very beginning to touch your body, because the body is put down in Christianity. The body is put down because it's sinful, because it's corrupt, because it's wicked. And it's a shame that we live in a body, especially if we're Christians. We live in a body ever how many years we are granted, 60, 70, 100, 120, whatever, and you live in that body thinking that body is sinful, it's wicked, and it's corrupt. And yet God is the creator of it, God is the builder of the body, and God moved into that body. Why would God move into something that's wicked, that's sinful, and that's corrupt? Now, there again, where is any logic at? Where's any common sense and reasoning at? Can you do things that you shouldn't do? Of course you can. That's called free will. Why in the world would a father want to destroy his children because he gives them a free will? To give them a free will and then say you don't have a choice is ridiculous. It is the most uncommon sensual thing I've ever heard. But oh my God, you don't realize how tight this noose is around our neck. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, a body have you prepared me. Well, what did God prepare a body for? He prepared it for a home that he can live in. And so I say this a lot, and I don't say it in any way to discredit our ideology behind prayer. If you want to get in touch with God, don't try to get in touch with something that's way out yonder somewhere, or the heavens are brass, or God's got the gates closed and he can't hear you. Get in touch with that which is within you. Get in touch with your breath. Get in touch with your inner man. Get in touch with the God that lives inside you. That's the place of your answer. That's the place of our victory. So let's read on. Verse 5. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he saith, sacrifice and offerings you would not, but a body hast thou prepared me. And burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast no pleasure. Then said I, Lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Above, here he repeats what he just said. When he said, sacrifice and offerings and burnt offerings and offerings for sin, thou wouldest not, neither had pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. Then he said, Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. Now, he takes away the first order. This is not covenant. This is the only place in the entire Bible where they try to put an old covenant and a new covenant and then hand us a book and tell us this book is the Biblios, or the Word of God, but it's got two covenants with it. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is the most ridiculous thing. But Christianity sold us that 1700 years ago through the Council of Nicaea under the leadership of the Catholic Church, and we've bought it hook, line, and sinker ever since. And so what have we done? We divided the book, not in the middle, but we divided the book and called it Old Covenant, Testament, and New Covenant, New Testament. And so we have two divisions. Rather than realize we have a compilation of books that are supposedly inspired books that are inspired by God. But yet, when you read these old books in the Old Covenant that were inspired by God, they're no longer inspired by God, so God obviously didn't know what he was talking about when he first said the things that he first said, because he trumped that and he gave us another one that's better. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is it to worship a God that's supposed to know the beginning from the end but didn't know that? Hello? Yeah, well, it's kind of a mess, ain't it? All right, real quickly now, the first from the second, let's look at that a little bit. It hadn't got anything to do with the Old Covenant, New Covenant, and actually the Greek words don't even infer that or don't imply that. It hasn't got nothing to do with covenants or testaments or your Bible divided into two divisions, Old Testament and New Testament. It does have to do with your physical body and your spiritual body. It does have to do with that which God gave you all power to be and do, and that which God gave you as a vehicle and a vessel that is supposed to be your servant. So go with 1 Corinthians chapter 15 with me real quickly. Look at verse 44. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 44. It is sown a natural body. It is raised. The word raised, actually the word raised, just in the Greek, it's anastasis, and it just simply means it recovers itself. It recovers itself. It's sown a natural body. It is recovered a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
Verse 45. So it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul, and the last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit that was not first, and here again I'm doing this same thing with first and second, okay? Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural. In other words, you see, you come here first as a natural being, your mama pushed you out as a natural being, and it is your natural being that is the temple, the house of God. Okay? And whenever the Spirit of God moved into the temple, the house that it had built, is when it took that first breath. And whenever Spirit moves out of that house it built, which is your natural body, is when you take your last breath. Again, logic, common sense. Spirit moves in. Does he stay there? Absolutely. Absolutely. He never gives up. Never. And you know, one of the reasons that he never gives up is because God's mercies endure how long?
Forever.
Wow, forever. Well, let me tell you something. Mercy trumps it all. Do you know what? In mercy, there's no judgment. None. Zero. Because the whole act of mercy is to trump any act of judgment. Period.
Yeah.
If mercy wasn't mercy, we'd be in trouble. But God's mercy trumps every bit of it. Covers it all. And in that mercy, there's not any judgment at all. Period. Zero. Zilch. Verse 46, howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterwards that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthy. The second man is the Lord of heaven. As is the earthly, such are they also that are earthly. As is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly. As we have borne, and that word born there, this actually means to be clothed upon. Some translations would actually say this, to be clothed upon. Not born, B-O-R-N-E. It actually would say clothed upon. So I can say it this, as we have been clothed upon by the image of the earthly. King James says, we shall. The Greek actually says right here, let us also. Not we shall, but as we have been clothed upon with the earthy, let us also, the word bear, be clothed upon, same word. Let us also be clothed upon with the image of the heavenly. So you see, saying the same thing here, he's saying, look, here's what happens. And I want to try to elaborate on this, because the greatest thing that the physical body has that actually is gift that God gave you is the experiences that you experience. Every one of us experience life. I don't care who you are. We experience life, and that's one of the great gifts of God. But yet in the experiences that we experience in this thing we call life, many experiences can hurt. Have you ever had an experience that's painful?
Yes.
Absolutely. Many, and what happens with those experiences that hurt are those experiences that are painful. If they get lodged in there, they can destroy you. They're not designed for that. Your body's not designed for that. And that's where the conundrum is at. That's where the problems get lodged at. In all of us, I don't care who we are. And generally, every experience that you have experienced Generally, not in every case, but generally in all those experiences, you chose it. Nobody made you. You chose it. You actually chose it. Why did I do that? I don't know. I've been asking myself that question. Why did I do that? Because that's the only place you're going to get an answer. You can point your finger at me and you can judge me for everything that you see me do wrong, according to you. But you aren't in my shoes. You aren't in my body. You have no idea my intentions when you see me do something. When you see me pull out in the road and my wheel's spinning, you think, look at that. He's like a child out of hell. I probably am. But your judgment against me doesn't mean anything. But yeah, what happens, we use that. So when we realize that the seat of all human experience is not outside me, it's inside me. All of my human experiences, I mean every one of them. So in saying that, I want you to go with me to what I feel like is the most corrupt parts of the Bible. And that's the first three chapters of the first book of this Bible. If you ever can get these right, if you can ever get Genesis 1, 2, and 3, even halfway close to right, it will change your world. I guarantee you, it will change your world. And so I want you to go with me to Genesis chapter 1. And I want to talk about some things that this says. And see if we can get some decent logic and and common sense. Because it takes both of those. It does take common sense, and where in the world it goes sometimes I do not know, but it does go out the window, don't it? Sometimes you go, well, where did common sense go? So experience comes from within, and it is the seat. It is that place when you experience life, and as we experience life, many times those experiences aren't serving me for my greater good, but they are serving me if I learn that they are experiences that I have chosen to experience. And now that I can put them in their proper place. And if I can do that, I have to, and the only way I can do this is learn that my body is a vehicle, it is a vessel that I live in, and God lives in it with me. And that it is my servant, it is not my master. And you know what it is? Say, the hell you say. I'll show you who's who, and then what will happen? That temple, that body, that house, it can stand up and it can begin to whine and cry and scream and kick and does all of the things that it can do. If we can get this right and learn to let it serve me, then I can get the good out of every experience that life offers me every day, because it offers them to me constantly. So one of the first places that I want to go, I want to do this, and I have to put my little guy up here on the board again, over and over. This is, I call this little character my stick man. I call him the stick man. Okay. And the reason I do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is the number in Hebrew gematria, in numerology. 7 is the number of completion and perfection. And we have really gotten that one messed up, because you are the complete and the perfect house God built. There's nothing wrong with it. It's complete and it's perfect. Now it may have some ailments, it may have this or that or the other, but as far as the design of it, there's nothing wrong with it. Now we might need to tweak it a little. and you go to tweaking on it, and I promise you, that thing will begin to scream. Mine always does. I go do a little tweaking on it. So I want you to look at this. I want you to think about this with me. And I want to put a word up here in Hebrew. This is Yod, Vav, and final mem. This is 600. Final mem has a 600 value. Vav has a 6 value. The Yod has a 10 value. So when you add this up, 600 and 10 and 6 is 616. Right?
Right.
Been really something if that total 666, but it don't. 616. So when I total 6, and 6 is 12, and 1 is what, 13? And I put 13 up there, and I say 1 plus 3 equals what? 4. So really, what that word yom, this is Y-O-W-M, that's how you say it in Hebrew, yom. And here's what that word means. It means life abundant. It means happy life. It means fulfilled life. Long life. These are ways that this word is translated. And so when you see this, as you see this, and this is the first place that you have to come to recognize this and to realize this, is that the first chapter and the first 3 verses of chapter 2 all refer to, now listen to this, let this sink deep. The first chapter and the first 3 verses of the second chapter refer to the 7 yoms that got translated for the word day. So the 7 days of creation are not days as in you think of days. They are the 7 facets of life that make up your physical body. And biology, medical science will show you and prove to you that you are made out of 7 endocrine glands on the conception of your physical body. Just like a little bitty worm. That's exactly what it kind of looks like. It's just so tiny. It's like 7 endocrine glands. And they have something that's phenomenal that chapter 2 begins to talk about that connects these physical 7 yoms of the physical body, the temple, the house that God's building. And you said here, if you think about this, the very first words, the first 3 words in the beginning is the Hebrew word Barashit. That's the word in Hebrew, Barashit. If you take off the first glip of that word, which is this glip right here, that's called the Beth. And it means house, home, body. That's the very first glyph that starts Genesis 1:1. And then the next Reshit means first or birthing place. And so the very first word in Hebrew, Barashit, actually means at birthing. The very first thing, at birthing. And then it begins to give you the 7 yoms, or the 7 facets of life, or the 7 endocrine glands that build the physical body. And that, like a domino, just goes from there all the way through the entire Bible. It's through the 7 colors of the rainbow. It's through the 7 golden menorah of the candlestick. It's through the 7 times dipped in the river. It just goes all the way through, even into the book of Revelation. So every place that you begin to see 7, if you will associate that with not only perfection, but with completion, and realize that's talking about your physical body. If you do that, you'll begin to see some changes in your concepts and your ideas as you read the Scriptures. But getting that is difficult. I can't tell you how many weeks, months, even years that I grappled with that over and over, and then chasing that word down, yom, all the way through Scripture, trying to find how is it used in other places besides the word day. Because just to say a day, it really throws me off. And then, and I've done some thorough research in everything about the numbers, the numerology, first, second, third, fourth, all of it, every bit of it. Every bit of it's biological. Every bit of it has to do with the building of the house, the temple, the physical body, which is you. But just to have a body, well, God was not finished with that. Then you come into Genesis chapter 2 and verse 3. And I'm trying to give you how I would have, if I were to take this and try to separate it from the Hebrew code, how it's originally written, I'm telling you how I would have done it. I would have said chapter 1 would have begun with verse 1 and ended with verse 3 in chapter 2. Chapter 2 would have begun with verse 4 in chapter 2 and ended with verse 25. And then chapter 3 would have begun with chapter 3 verse 1 and would have ended with verse 24 of chapter 3. And that's how I would have made that division. And here's what I would have said. It's chapter 1 through 2, 3 is about the body. That's chapter 1 through 2, 3. And then from 2, 4 through 25, I would have said that is about the soul. And this is how it starts. Why would I need a soul? Because you see, the same identical word for soul, same identical word in Hebrew for soul, is also mind. What good would your body be without mind? Your mind is not your brain. Your mind is not your kidneys. Your mind is not your lungs. Your mind is not your bladder. Your mind, what is your mind? Your mind is that which thinks, reasons, has logic about it. Your mind is not even actually in your body totally. Your mind is in and around your body. It's about your whole body. And you have two facets of your mind. You have a masculine and a feminine aspect of your mind. And it tells you that very clearly in these verses right here, 2:4 through verse 25. And they're called Esh and Esha, the two aspects of the mind. Or we call it soul. But see, in religion, they have so screwed this up, messed this up, that people don't even know the difference between spirit and soul. They think spirit is soul and soul is spirit. They're not. They're not. Ruach. That's the word for spirit. Nafesh. That's the word for soul. I mean, does that sound like the same word mean the same thing? Come on, absolutely not. They're not. But the numeric value of both Ruach, Nafesh, and Nachesh, all the numeric value is 7. Why? Because they all have to do with the body that God built. God built a body, and God gave a body a soul, mind. And then here's where the real rub comes. We come over here to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1, and let's go there right now and let's just see what it says. Genesis 3:1 says, "Now the serpent." Boy, now we really got in trouble there, didn't we? Now the serpent. Okay, that's kind of how we have that little thing right there is kind of the idea that we have of a snake, a serpent. Generally, that's the idea of a cobra, how he stands up on his tail and his head pointed. Actually, that's your brain and your spinal column that goes all the way down to your gonads. That's what it would look like from the side. It's all one thing, and it's called a nafesh, nachesh. It's spelled exactly like the word soul, The only difference is the middle glip. I'll spell it right here. Soul is non Faye. I wish my marker wasn't writing so light. I bet you can't see it, can you, on the thing there? Let's see if I can
Just
find it.
barely.
Huh? Is it getting really? And then the word serpent is spelled, we'll mark through that where you can see it a little better. That's non-Faye Sheen. That's the word for soul. And then the word serpent is non-Che'at Sheen. The only difference in the word serpent and the word soul is the center glip. This one right here has an 8 value, and this one right here has an 80 value. That's the only difference in them. And so when I start to look at those two words and try to figure out the numeric value of both of those words, the soul and the serpent, do you know what I would get? Well, let's just real quickly do it, and I want you to see something. 380 and 50. What's that total? 380, 430, right? Huh?
Right.
430, and you add that together. 4 and 3 is what?
7.
Huh?
Nothing.
Seven.
I was multiplying.
No, we add 4 and 3.
7.
Jamacha, you add. Is what?
7.
7. Okay, now this right here has 300 value, just like that. And then you have an 8, that's a che'at, and then you have a 50. So you have 358, is that right?
Yeah.
358, which equals what? 5 and 3 is 8.
16.
8 and 8 is 16. And you add 6 and 1 together, what do you got?
7.
Wow. 7. Isn't that amazing? So the serpent that you've been taught to think was a talking snake, that's not. So what is this part over here, the serpent? So what does your brain and all of your nerve system indicate? So now you have a body, yom, and now that body has a mind, a soul, has an ability to think, to reason, logic. Then what's the serpent all about? What's your brain and your nerve system? Because your brain and your nerve system connects to what? All of your 5 sensual being, right?
Yes.
So what does it give you the ability to do? Experience. That's exactly what the word serpent means. Learn by your experience. And if you kind of think with me, you see the simplicity and yet the profoundness about this. So if I can learn to break down these first 3 chapters and grab them and realize that these stories are not literal stories, they have been perverted. The stories have been perverted, and the translations have translated it in accordance with the perversion of the story. But when you begin to see the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, and the meaning of all of this, you begin to realize, whoa, this is about my body that God gave me, and my soul, my mind that God gave me, and then my ability to experience this wonderful life where God put me. Wow. Can change my world and turn it upside down. You can realize that you are truly in the driver's seat of you. Nobody else is, you are. You are in the driver's seat of you. Your children are gifts from God. They are not pawns that you have been given to manipulate. They're just gifts. And isn't it wonderful that we can learn to treat these gifts? So I just wanted to, God gave us, He gave you and me all of this to serve us, not to control us.
Right.
Yep.
He didn't give you a mind that has the ability to think so it can control what's going on in your life. He gave you that mind that has the ability to think so that you can use it for your greater benefit in life. And if it's not using you for your greater benefit in life, guess what? You can tell it to shut up. Nobody else can, but you can. And many times in a day when I tell my mind, myself, shut up. You know why? Because the stupid thing will start to think a thing and just keep thinking it. And it's like a freight train going down a mountain. It can't seem to stop it. The only thing I can do is back out of it and just sit there and watch it for a while and just look at it. Okay, you idiot. Keep going. I'm not talking to y'all. I'm talking to myself. You have to understand that. I'm talking to me. Because I know how my mind, and I'm assuming yours probably is the same way, unless you've mastered it. If you've mastered it, then you would agree with what I'm saying. You'd say, amen. Yes, hallelujah, brother. Let him preach it right on. Because this is our quest in life. We are put here to experience the greatness of this paradise that we're in. Or hell that we've made. If we've made a hell out of our paradise, guess what? We can turn it around and make a heaven out of it. So your heaven and your hell is your choosing.
Right.
Nobody else's. Nobody else chooses it for you. You and I choose it for ourselves. And I'm telling you, I think that I want to choose for me and my house. I'm talking about my body. For me and my house, my body, I'm going to choose paradise. I'm going to choose bliss. I'm going to choose happiness. I'm going to choose those things that serve me for my greater good, not things that tear me down.
Right.
Amen. So I'll just, any questions? Anybody have a, and I'm working on this, and I told y'all a few months back, I told Claire and Eddie that I'm working on this to get to a series that I taught years ago, 15, 20 years ago at least, about the serpent, that it is not the devil. It hasn't got anything to do with Satan, the devil. And when we see what Satan, the devil, really is, how it's used in the Hebrew Scripture, it will really blow your mind. And that's where I'm going. I'm going to do that and get to that sometime in the next few weeks. And so, with that, I'll just quit. Any questions?